What's going on, everyone? We are all back in our little Zoom boxes, disassembled after last week's awesome, fantastic, so much fun in-person trivia event in Washington, D.C. We're all back in
Oh,
our
yeah.
homes tonight. Um, we're doing something more traditional, like Aiden promised at the end of the last episode. So we're going to do a review. We're going to talk about a movie. Let's talk about the latest film from the Russo Brothers and Agbo Films, The Gray Man. So, as is tradition, I will ask, what'd you guys think?
I liked it. I liked it. I think it's a case where I feel like every single ever like if it weren't for the fact that like every single piece of the production was really high quality, I feel like the script might have made the film feel meh, but because I felt like Ryan Gosling and Chris Evans and Ana de Armas were all really good, and like the action was surprisingly, like in my opinion, surprisingly well done. It did make it enjoyable for me, so I did like it. Wasn't as good as The Nice Guys, which this film reminded me a shocking amount of, but still it was still good.
Yeah, if you haven't yet, check out Declan's new Letterboxd list
Mm.
talking about Ryan Reynolds being accompanied in a mission by a teenage girl with a co-star who's been in comic book movies in a movie directed by a
Marvel.
Marvel Cinematic Universe
And
director.
also, of course, Ryan Gosling gets injured repeatedly.
Oh yeah, Ryan Gosling gets hurt a lot. Um,
Hmm.
yeah, I liked it. I think the critical flaws, because what I do want to talk about over the course of the next however long we talk about this, half hour or whatever, I want to talk about what I loved about the movie, and I really did enjoy it. But I think the flaws in this movie are it follows a lot of tropes of action thrillers. There's a fight sequence on a plane, there's a fight sequence on a train. I could Dr. Seuss my way through all the action thriller tropes. I'm not going to,
Hmm.
but I thought it had issues with you know Lloyd Hansen being pushed off to the side and sort of like calling the shots from afar for the second act.
Hmm.
I would have liked to see him more involved in the action during the second act. Obviously, he's very involved in the third act. And the opposite for Danny Miranda, played by Ana de Armas, she's entirely pushed to the side in the third act. She's relegated to come pick up the kid duty.
Hmm.
So I think, had the Russos involved two of the three lead actors a little bit more in the full story, I might have enjoyed it more. And just the last thing I'll say about what I didn't like, because I want to talk about what I liked, is that this film, since it was announced, Russo brothers, Chris Evans, Ryan Gosling, Ana de Armas, I've been hyped for this movie for years. And I wasn't sure when it was going to be released until like 3 months ago when I heard Netflix late July. And I was like, whoa, that happened really fast. So
Hmm.
I don't know if the production sped up or they ramped it up, and then got it done and then into post and then all of that. I don't know if it was done a long time ago and they're finally putting it together now. I don't really know what happened with the production timeline and the schedule for that, but it felt just a little bit rushed. And, I think it might have benefited from a greater run up. Max, Ben,
Hmm.
what do you guys think?
Yeah, I agree with what you said, George. I mean, I remember hearing about this film in like, I don't know, 2020, 2019, something like that, and hearing them announce the cast. And this was right on the heels of Knives Out, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
So Ana de Armas was fresh on the mind of delivering a fantastic performance. So I was like, okay, great.
Chris Evans as
Chris
well.
Evans, yeah, exactly. Chris Evans, he was in quantity. Ryan Gosling, also known quantity. Like there were three lead actors in this film that brought a ton of star power. And then you add in the Russo brothers, who were topping off Infinity War, bringing us Endgame, and you think, okay, like Netflix, $200 million budget with these three actors, like this is going to be a great film. Like it's going to be a lot of fun. And so I think expectation probably got the better of me. And overall it was a lot of fun. It's like it's a good action film, right? It's not a boring film by any means, but like George said, it follows a lot of the tropes in action films, and I think it suffers for that. It yeah, I mean,
There are
it's
no
solid.
boundaries
Like,
pushed.
yeah. I mean, I think it might be hard boundaries with a film like this. But yeah, Ben.
Can I just very quickly say, in terms of boundary pushing though, I
Yeah.
will say that Chris Evans' character does seem to directly cause like 3 9/11s in Prague. So that's a bit of a boundary that gets pushed. It's just a little bit,
Let's see.
Anyway, as
Collateral
you were saying,
damage in an action
sorry.
thriller. How is that a boundary?
I was honestly surprised.
I'm actually,
how much
I'm gonna
you-
bring up that. So I generally, I enjoyed the movie, like you all said. But the main problem, like it's too much action. There's not enough there. I think this movie is carried by their cast so hard. They all do great jobs, but the roles they're given are kind of plain. I don't think any of them get a lot of backstory. Ryan Gosling's character is reduced to like, I'm in prison because I have daddy issues. And that's as far as it goes, really.
Not exactly Andy Dufresne.
It's sad because it makes me that the Russo brothers don't have variety. Like action is great, but this whole like plot with the cast they had so much talent. The script was just, not only did it follow tropes, but like it was too cliche for the material. Like it was masquerading as a spy thriller in the beginning. There's a lot of like intrigue, and it brings you into the story. What is this drive? It seems like there's this vast conspiracy, and then it just turns out that it's a bunch of bad guys just doing things they got from it. I mean, it's just so plain. Hearing about this old guy, well, I guess, I don't know, they'll introduce in the sequel, but it's like that. I shouldn't need the sequel to be interested in the first movie. So yeah, like the action's great. I think Ryan Gosling and Chris Evans play off each other really, really well. But they really have a strong cast, and they all. It seems like no one has enough time on the screen. There's just too much action. Nothing else happens. So, while I did enjoy it, I would liken it sort of like, I love Jason Statham movies, and they're good because Jason Statham's in them. This movie is good because of its cast, but like most Jason Statham movies, I would not say are good movies. And I think I'm more disappointed with this film just because it had so much potential. The very fact that I could think of like 10 Jason Statham movies that have a more compelling plot to them than this film is kind of weird to me. Like,
how does this film compare to Crank?
honestly, I don't know. Craig is a little more creative. Like they're stealing his organs. They steal his heart. Yeah, I mean it's an action thriller for sure, but it knows it's an action thriller.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
I think. Oh, go ahead, Max.
okay, yeah, just a quick point. I mean, one thing about the Russo brothers is that most of the projects that we've seen them have both critical and commercial success with have been the Marvel films. They've been the films where they didn't have to build up the backstory of these characters. They relied on the work of other directors. And I'm not saying that that makes them untalented or uncreative or that they're incapable of doing that. It's just what we've seen from them is that their success and the projects that we've most liked are projects that we're emotionally and we've invested time and money into by that point. this is an original, well, not an original idea, but it's a new film, new characters that are being introduced to a worldwide audience. And the same thing with 21 Bridges, right? It's also a flawed film. Like Chadwick, of course, was fantastic as he always was. But that movie also got a lot of the same criticism that I've seen this movie get, is that the pacing was off, or the writing was cliche, or what have you. You know, I think caring about the characters is something that we need to see from the Russo brothers going forward, right? Like develop the
I
characters.
will say, just as a slight counter to that, is that if you include the Russo's TV work, that it is potentially showing them actually successfully developing characters. Like I mean, off the top of my head, I know they directed like almost all of the early episodes of Community, and so they were. I obviously, the director on a TV episode is not quite the same as the director of film, but nonetheless, it does show that they're capable of it. So the fact that, and also Arrested Development as well, they directed many episodes of that, but it shows that they are capable of doing it. And so it's unfortunate that they didn't bring those skills from TV to this film, as you were saying.
Well, in a film, you don't exactly. I'm sorry, Ben. In a film, you don't exactly have the leeway to develop characters over like a season-long arc in television.
Yeah.
You don't have 24 episodes to say, here's who Jeff Winger is, here's how he's going to interact with, the Greendale 6 or Greendale 7, whatever it was. I guess 6, not including him anyway.
Yeah.
You don't have the leeway. You have 2 hours and 9 minutes in The Gray Man. And people may have read the novel before seeing the film.
But the novel's different. Like the novel is a spy novel. It's not an action thriller. I mean, that's
Ben, you brought that up at the beginning of what you were just saying. The opening sequence, when you see,
and I love that opening sequence.
Forgive me for
Runner. The lighting was awesome.
The use of lighting throughout the film is fantastic. When he's fighting with the flashlight, and when the sun's coming up over the fountain or over the water in the final fight. It is a fountain, right?
Yeah. Yes, it is.
So the use of lighting and the cinematography, all those shots where you've got this big, wide, like almost drone shot establishing look, zooming right in to the action, is shot so well. And the way that they, complement the cinematography with the lighting, I mean, this is a really, like, technically speaking, this is a really well-made film.
Yeah, it was a $200 million film, like, and it's Netflix produced and made by the Russo. It's gonna look good.
Yeah.
But I mean, and I'm not shitting on your opinion. I just, I think, like,
no, please do.
The expectation for this film far surpassed what was delivered. And that's okay. That's gonna happen. It doesn't mean that I'm gonna stop watching expensive films. It doesn't mean that I'm gonna stop watching the Russo brothers or Netflix films. Like, no, like, I'll watch films like this. They're fun. Like, this was a fun film to watch. I enjoyed it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you mentioned the expectation, and we have talked about that a lot with this film. Part of the expectation comes from the Russos, from the cast. Netflix making it the most expensive production budget in its history of original content. Yeah. Another part of that, Marcus and McFeely, the writers of, I think, 5 MCU films.
Mm-hmm. You can tell the MCU influence. There's tons of stuff.
The quips, the one-liners. It was an MCU movie in that regard.
And I
think you could hear Tony Stark saying those lines.
And then he said, "That happened." No.
It was good to an extent, but I think there was probably too much of it in place of like actual dialogue that was gonna make us feel a certain way. They all just they feel too fake to me. I mean, especially like I love the Chris Evans performance, but Lloyd,
delicious.
the entire government cabal, like taking people out. It's just so ridiculous to me.
And how about that
and
mustache?
like you said with Lloyd, like he literally takes out, I don't know, an entire city with gigantic tank weapons. And the government agents are like, I don't know how it got there. And you expect me to like believe that? I can't. I can only suspend my disbelief so much. Especially when it's like central to the plot, like the bad guys. Like Lloyd is the big bad guy in this film, but like I wanted to see the government, get the corrupt government leaders get taken down. But
Yeah, I mean, but do they though? I mean, Suzanne is still
It's-
very much in her job at the end of the film.
No,
Regé-Jean
what I'm
Page's
saying,
character is
it's
still very
kind
much
of
in his
weird.
role.
like it's ridiculous that they're not absolutely under investigation and like scrutiny. I mean, I don't believe it. Also, I thought I love Billy Bob Thornton, but is the fakest CIA recruiter of all time. Ryan Gosling's like, so what do you think? Like, am I disposable or whatever? I can't remember what he said. And Billy Bob Thornton's just like, yeah.
Well, no, he asked about the is there an exit strategy?
Oh yeah, an exit
Yeah.
strategy.
It's like,
No,
We're still working on one.
actually, I wasn't expecting to get this far.
I liked Billy Bob in this. I
Hmm.
wasn't expecting to see him. I had forgotten that he was on the cast list, but
Yeah.
he
Yeah, I
was
did too.
fine. He had enough chemistry with the young
Yeah.
woman playing his niece.
No, I just found him like, they all just have their a little too ridiculous to be real. And
Yeah.
that was mine to me. It was like, really? The CIA recruiters? Like, yeah. No, we're not very good people. You're in jail.
Oh, I mean,
so abuse.
that's exemplified by Regé-Jean Page, right? I mean, he's not a good person, and he's in the higher ups of the intelligence community. And by the way, what an American accent from that guy. Seamless. I wouldn't know he was British.
He's British. Wow.
Oh my God.
There you go.
I don't know.
That's the same. That's the place where Charlie Cox is from. I said that just to hurt you, George. Just so you
Declan,
know.
I'm booting you.
God damn it.
I do think Carmichael and I can't remember the other woman's name. They're a little just too
Suzanne.
Suzanne.
yeah, sorry, Suzanne.
But Danny, you're right, Declan. Danny's there too at the end. Get out of my personal space.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. Just they're really dumb. Like they seem so dumb to me. I don't know. They're just so generic bad guys.
You know what I was kind of thinking about as we're talking about it. It's like as I said earlier, like I'm gonna quickly compare this once again to The Nice Guys, kind of.
Yeah.
The Nice Guys, I feel like
there.
The Nice Guys, I feel like again it's similar, like they both have similar plots, but more specifically, they both have an immense amount of talent behind them, both in front of the camera and behind the camera. The Nice Guys, I feel like, use the strength of all of its talent to tell its story in the best possible way it could, and I would say succeeded with flying colors. Russell Crowe and Ryan Gosling are really fucking hilarious, and like the setting and the story was all just I genuinely entertaining all of it. I feel with The Gray Man, it's relying on its great cast and great crew to hold up what is ultimately a story okay and pretty cliched. Again, it's if Chris Evans wasn't so entertaining, his villainous character might just be kind of weird. Like the fact that Chris Evans made a Babe reference when he said that'll do.
Yeah, I think it's really entertaining, but
I
it
love
is
that.
ridiculous. It's like we watched America, the motion picture. It's ridiculous. Like ridiculous in the same way, but neither of them I can say are good films. Like very, very different films, but it reminded me of that just because it's so cartoonish. Like
America the Motion Picture
sure.
knows exactly what it is, kind of, you know.
Yeah.
I just in terms of like you potential, I feel like the Nice Guys used its potential and exceeded it, and I feel like the Gray Man didn't quite live up to
The
it.
Nice
Even though,
Guys-
again, I still like the
The
film.
Nice Guys
But
managed to have, an interesting plot about, a Congresswoman. There's a lot to that mystery, while simultaneously they're exploring, a relationship between a father and a daughter, a guy who's basically just, I forget, he's like I can't remember what Russell Crowe's like job was.
he was
like
just
a
like a guy,
private
literally
investigator.
guy who goes to
Yeah,
pin people
but
up.
like more like, hey, you stay away from this guy's wife, or
Mhm.
I'll beat you up. So not too much investigation,
I
but
gotta rewatch The Nice Guys.
Yeah.
yeah, I mean they explored like 3 different characters and the daughter who, they're trying to, or the girl that, they're trying to protect.
Mhm.
There was a lot there. The Gray Man has replaced all of that with action. It's not like the Nice Guys is lacking in action.
Mhm.
It just doesn't have action every 2 minutes.
I think what I can say about these two movies is that The Nice Guys knows that it's an action comedy. It's neo-noir kind of, but it's
Mhm.
also, it's straight up an action comedy. You have Ryan Gosling, falling on his face in
Yeah.
the film and like
Yeah.
getting up with like a little one-liner quip.
And like
In
when
this
he
film-
punches the window
Yeah.
and like breaks his hand.
Yeah.
Which is so
So
funny.
It
That breaks his
works.
hand.
It works for comedy. This film, and there are, I don't want to say overarching, long, big scale tonal shifts, but when you've got a big action sequence and then, or like a really intense conversation, like the one between Six and Lloyd, right in the middle of the second act, right around the halfway point of the film, right as they're getting introduced to each other, you've got this really intense conversation, and then you've got Six saying, "Hey Lloyd, I don't like you already," and it's like that's such a Tony Stark thing to say, and like
After he's
yes,
just fallen out of an airplane, and there was this,
Yeah.
giant action sequence of
so there are moments that feel like what has made the MCU work in large part, which is action comedy scripts. 95% of what we've seen in the MCU is action comedy to an extent. Say what you will about Multiverse of Madness or The Winter Soldier. There are comedic elements to pretty much everything in the MCU. Marcus McFeely, probably the most seasoned MCU writers. Joe Russo also co-wrote this film, and then was in the director's chair, and he produced it, so he was a big creative force behind it. Anthony as well. They're going to go with what they know works, even if it doesn't necessarily work for the larger tone of the film. And I think if they had gone straight action thriller, it would have worked a lot better. If they had gone action comedy with this cast, are you kidding me? Would have been phenomenal. Honestly, if they had leaned into action comedy for this one, I might have given it 5 stars on Letterboxd.
Yeah.
I don't care. But yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, it just, and don't get me wrong, I gave it a 4.5 out of 5 on Letterboxd. It's probably like high 80s out of 100 for me. I haven't scored it there yet, but I just feel like there's a piece or pieces missing from this being a truly great film.
Mhm.
And that's happened with a lot of films that I've been really, highly anticipating over the last few years.
I can't imagine why I would watch, like I enjoy it, maybe I'll rewatch it, but like I would rather watch something like John Wick or a movie like that does the same thing. And honestly, even John Wick has like tons of backstory to him. I mean, that's the thing, like you can make a good action film, but you do need to have some depth to your characters. I think the biggest thing is I just don't care about any of them. Six, I sort of care about because Ryan Gosling, is a hell of an actor. Chris Evans is really entertaining.
He's the best part of the movie.
That's about it. Yeah, Chris Evans, I think, is the best
I mean,
Like
when
90
Six
Day
drops that
Honest.
grenade, when they're literally
Oh.
face to face. Six drops the grenade, and Lloyd just looks at him and goes, "Ballsy." And then
I also-
you know they run away or whatever to get away from the grenade. But
Yeah.
I also
like
did like
he's-
when
Joe Russo
Lloyd-
said in interviews in the press junket leading up to this film, Joe Russo said that Chris Evans' performance was, and I quoted this earlier unintentionally, delicious. That's exactly the vibe I get from how Chris approached playing Lloyd.
Yeah.
I also enjoyed when I also just enjoyed the moment when he ran, like he's in the middle of like a villain speech and then suddenly gets shot with a tranquilizer dart in the ass and it completely like throws him off. I felt like that was a great moment.
I shot myself in the ass.
No, that part was like a brilliant combination of performance and like subverting what you expect is going to happen.
I need to talk about the other criticism I had, which was the introduction of I forget what his character's name was, Danush. Then
Oh yeah,
his camel friend.
Danush was in this movie, wasn't he?
He drives up, they hire bounty hunters to track them down, just like John Wick. Cough cough. And yeah, he comes in at the very end. He seemingly indestructible. And he really doesn't appear until I think literally the end when everyone knows they're tracking him, but they've already been captured, whatever. And then the whatever Ana de Armas's character was,
Danny.
Danny. Yeah, she fights with them and then loses.
But
And
then
he's
he
like,
just gives her the
these
drop.
are honorable people.
Yeah.
And
Once he learned like that,
I
they
mean,
were
But
probably
he
going to
doesn't
kill her.
learn that during the fight.
Yeah.
He knew that going in. He still fights,
yeah,
and then
I didn't
he's
have
like-
a problem with him having morals, but the only thing we see him do is track him down for like 10 minutes, and then he finally arrives, has a fight, and is like, "Nah, I'm just kidding." Are you kidding? Why? How did someone write that? You could have used him more. You could have had I don't know, you could have done anything else really. But that was not the play. At least have him, I don't know, say something or do something. Don't just, but I guess that's like a microcosm of this movie, which is he's clearly having a moral battle of like whether I actually go through with the job or not. It's just reduced to him fighting someone. Which is, yeah, I mean, I guess that's my criticism for a lot of film. Like a lot of these fights could just be replaced with, I don't know, dialogue. It's a crazy thing, but yeah. I enjoyed the film, but I just think it could have been better, like you guys said, with all the talent they had, with all the money they had. Yeah,
I agree.
I don't have too much else to say.
Yeah, I think we can keep this one short and get into final thoughts. Max, why don't you start us off?
Those were my final thoughts. I mean,
Oh my God.
it was.
I just said mine, I guess.
I mean, it was, like I said, it's fun, right? And I would say, sure, go see it, right? If everybody has a Netflix account or has access to a Netflix account at this point, you go see it. Have fun for what it is, but don't go in expecting anything groundbreaking or life altering, because it's just not that. It's just a fun ride. It's an action film.
Yeah, expect an action film, not a spy thriller.
Declan, do you have any final thoughts?
Yeah, no, again, it's a film that had great potential that didn't quite live up to it. Still liked it, still do recommend it. Though I also highly recommend The Nice Guys. And if you haven't seen that one yet, well, check it out
I would watch,
as well.
yeah, The Nice Guys before The Gray Man.
I would too. and I would probably, Max brought up 21 Bridges. I would probably watch 21 Bridges before I watch this one again. Because that, you know what you're getting, action thriller throughout. There's very little comedy, if at all.
Mm.
This one, you know, I mean, I love Gosling, I love Evans, I love De Armas, but you know, we've talked about this movie, and its flaws. And you know, I loved certain parts of this film. Chris Evans was outstanding. You know, he's not Captain America anymore. He takes roles like Ransom Drysdale in Knives
Also,
Out, or Lloyd Hansen.
I think this is the second time we've seen him with a mustache. Has he had a mustache other than this and Knives Out? Because I'm convinced
You know, he
have a
didn't have a
mustache in Knives
mustache in it, but during the press.
he didn't. Oh yeah, that's right. You did.
No, he just looks so naturally attractive with the mustache that it feels right.
I was
That's
trying
what
to
it
think
is,
whether he's
Ben.
growing out
Right.
a mustache for like bad guys because
He
so,
did
like,
it. He did in some movie, but I'm blanking on what it was. Like,
I swear it was another bad guy with a mustache.
I'm
Buzz
trying
Lightyear.
to remember.
Cop.
It's a good idea. Like his face is so synonymous with
Mhm.
Captain America that growing out the mustache.
It was an
The guy-
intentional subversion, kind of.
The guy genuinely has great range as an actor.
Mhm.
You know, you could
Yeah.
see him as Steve Rogers and you could see him as Lloyd Hansen, and it's two completely different people. And you know, Ryan Gosling, I haven't seen him do action thriller before. You know, action comedy is probably the closest he's gotten with The Nice Guys.
Mhm.
Correct me if I'm wrong, if you guys have seen him in something.
I guess Drive, sort of, but nah,
Drive.
Drive
No,
is
the
more.
night. Yeah.
kind of a strange.
It's
Well,
like
I mean, it's
like a noir drama.
yeah. That's good. That's a good way to describe it.
Yeah.
And you know, Ana de Armas, you know, what a run she's having with the best 15 minutes of No Time to Die. You know, an incredible
Knives Out,
performance that we've talked about in Knives Out. Now she's, you know, in The Gray Man, and she's going to be Marilyn Monroe this fall. And I'm excited when we talk about Blonde, because that movie is going to be.
That'll be good.
I mean, I love biopics, so that'll be really fun. But yeah, the cast, again, we talked about Reggae Jean and Billy Bob.
Also, I found it funny that Ryan Gosling and Ana de Armas had great chemistry because they worked on Blade Runner together.
Right. Yeah.
That's right, Blade Runner 2049.
Yeah, they were in a futuristic relationship, I guess. And then there was also Ana de Armas and Chris Evans worked in Knives Out. So I thought it was funny they had chemistry with them.
The cast was the best part of the film. Ben, you brought up a great point. I would have loved to have seen more of Danny and Lloyd interact. So we didn't really get that in this film. It was Danny and Six and Lloyd.
I mean, Danny I felt like I could have used Danny more in the film.
Yeah.
Like pushed aside in the middle of the film. Which, sort of made
And you know,
sense.
they had this great setup in the second act where Six said to Danny, "Just once I want to save your life," and then he doesn't get to do that. So maybe he'll do that in the sequel or the spinoff.
Yeah.
But yeah,
How did we not get a pay? You can't do that.
there's no payoff.
How is there no pay? I actually remember.
Flaws in this film. Great cast, great creative team. Like I said earlier, shot really well, lit really well.
It's on Netflix. You don't have to go far. So if you're bored and there's nothing else you can watch, it's entertaining.
It's an entertaining 2 hours. I think, you know, I'll definitely see this again at some point. It's not one that I would just push aside forever. So yeah, let me wrap this up here. If we're all done, The Gray Man is currently playing in a limited release in theaters nationwide. Does that contradict limited release nationwide? I don't know. Who cares?
No.
It's playing in some theaters. You can probably find it on Fandango.
Check it out.
And
Really
it's
need to.
a lot easier access on Netflix. I personally wish I had gotten to see it on the big screen. I watched it on Netflix. But yeah, enjoy The Gray Man. Let us know what you think about it. We will see you for the payoff of my victory pending Josh Brolin's blood type in our DC trivia event. So we're going to be talking about my favorite movie next week. I mentioned it in an earlier episode of this podcast. Go back and see if you can find it. So we will see you. We will see you next week when we talk about Elvis again. All right. Sorry I spoiled it.
Yeah.
This was a fun one. Good to get back on Zoom with you guys, even though it was so much more fun in person.
Mhm.
We do what we do.
Yeah, we'll do another in-person one again very soon, I'm sure. So until next week. Good night.
Good night.
Good night.